Welcome to part 8 of the series where I show you how to write, publish, and launch a successful nonfiction book so you can grow your business and make a massive impact on the world. Now, part 8 is all about formatting, and we're going to talk about how to create a great formatted book, what you need to do, who you need to hire, and how you can do that so it's seamless, and most importantly, so that you can look like a professional who publishes. Now, formatting is one of the easiest ways to separate the amateurs from the pros when it comes to publishing a book. And I'm going to talk more about that. But I believe after writing 4 books myself, after helping hundreds of people write their books, I believe that this is one of the biggest factors to publishing your book professionally and to show your readers that you are a legitimate, professionally published author. Now, my name is Jake Kelfer. I'm a 4-time best-selling author. I've turned my books into multiple successful 6- and 7-figure businesses in the speaking, coaching, and book publishing space. My last book was called Big Idea 2 Bestseller. You can get a free copy down below. And I currently run a publishing company called Big Idea to Bestseller. And our specialty is helping entrepreneurs and experts write, publish, launch, and market nonfiction books for their business. Now, I have worked with hundreds and hundreds of people. We have helped people in 50 plus different categories and genres write books. And I even wrote my last book in less than an hour a day, and it's all documented. So when I talk about this process, I've done this before and we've helped a lot of people do this, and I hope that this will help you see things a little bit differently so that you can be as successful as possible when it comes to your book writing adventure. Now, let's talk about how to properly format your book so that you can be taken seriously as an author. Now, originally I never gave this a ton of thought. I always just assumed that you would take it from a Google Doc or Word document and somehow it gets published up on Amazon and wherever books are sold. And I always thought it was just a click of a button. But as I've gone through this process multiple times myself, and as I continue to run a publishing house and I learn more and more every single day, I've learned that formatting and laying out your book and really designing the inside of your book, it's an important piece of this puzzle, because if a reader picks up the book and they start to read it and the experience on the interior is not good, they're going to put your book down, okay? Readers won't just do that, but they're going to stop seeing you as the expert that you want them to see you as. Because how could you imagine someone's going to spend $10,000 to invest in you if you can't even have your book formatted in a way that looks legitimate? So we have to make sure that we are seen as an expert. And the way you're going to do that is by being professionally published. Now, formatting is one of the biggest areas for people to tell if you are self-published like an amateur or if you are publishing like a professional. Now, let me tell you this. You can self-publish. The difference between self-published and professional publishing is simply this, for the sake of this video. Self-publishing, and why self-publishing gets such a bad rap, is because people will just go up there, they'll take their Google Doc, they'll take their Microsoft Word doc, and they'll just upload it to the places that you can do so that the books can be distributed. And the problem with that is the formatting's wrong, the sizing's wrong, the words are cut off on the pages, and you look like an amateur. And because it's so easy for anybody to just upload a book and self-publish, self-publishing often gets this bad rap. But here's the really cool thing. You can be professionally published and still receive all the benefits of self-publishing. And that's what we do for our clients. We will professionally publish you. We'll help you professionally format your book, but you'll retain 100% ownership. And the difference between these two things is huge because you get all the same benefits, but you get seen as a legitimate author who has a real, formatted, looking good book that when you put it on a bookshelf next to your favorite book, next to the biggest books in the world, the only difference will be the cover of the title, your name. But on the interior, it's going to both be seen as legitimate, both be taken very, very seriously. And so I really can't stress this enough that you have to make sure that your book is formatted properly, because this is the easiest way to separate the amateurs from the pros. Now, let's talk about it. By the time you get to this part of the process, all right, your book is edited and your front cover is typically designed. This is amazing because once you finish this stage, this often concludes a majority of the production of your book, meaning that you are one step closer to actually publishing your book and making it available for readers to get their hands on. this is really, really a fun part of the process because it often is the time where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm actually seeing my book for the first time in book format. Because up until now, you've written your book in a Google Doc or you've written your book in a Microsoft Word doc, and then you've probably gotten it edited. Okay. And when you get it edited, there's often editing it in that same style and format. And some editors will adjust it for you a little bit. But now when you get it actually formatted, this is when it becomes true book. This is when it becomes the size that you're looking to get your book, whether it's a 5x8, 5.5 by 8.5, 6x9 book. This is where you really start to lay that out. So there are softwares out there, okay? If you're a DIY type of person, there's softwares that you can format your book, but this is another area of the production phase where I recommend outsourcing to a publishing house that you've partnered with or by directly hiring a formatting expert. And here's the reason for this. And it's different for everybody, okay? But what I have found is there are some really, really great softwares out there, but you still have to learn that software and then you still have to be good at that said software. So while you might end up with the same result, you can often spend a lot of money to get the software, or you can spend too much time trying to identify and learn the software. And at that point, it might have just made more sense to hire the expert based on your hourly rate. So this is something that for most people, I would just say, look, outsource it, work with a publishing company, or outsource it to an individual and go directly to someone who can format your book. I've done both. We obviously now have a publishing company and we do this for our clients. So when it comes time to format your book, here are a few things that I want you to consider so that you could have the best book for yourself. Number one, you're going to need a separate format for your ebook version, okay, and for your paperback versions. The way you upload, the way you distribute, the way publishing companies distribute them is there are different file formats that you need for the respective type of books that you're creating. And while yes, it's still one book, it can often be seen as two different versions that you have to upload so that the files can be accurate. So you're going to need to make sure that you get your ebook version as well as your paperback version. The next thing when it comes to formatting is feel free to express yourself and add some personality, but don't try to overdo it and make the inside of your book overly fancy and sophisticated. Now, depending on the style of book you are doing, you may want to have more personality, you may want to keep it more mainstream. If you are trying to go for a book that's bigger, that's bolder, and there's a lot less words in it, well, maybe your font, your interior is going to be bigger, bolder, less on a page. But if you're trying to write more of a traditional book and you're trying to work more of a how-to guidebook, you're going to probably want to keep it a little bit more traditional like some of the books in the categories. And if you're trying to have tons of imagery on the inside or you're trying to use fancier paper and color images, well, that's going to change what you would want to do, but it's also going to change the outcome and what it's going to cost you most likely to be able to print these books for yourself. So express yourself, know the type of book and the genre that you're in, and then don't try to overdo it because that can sometimes, again, ruin the reader's experience. And our whole goal here is to get people to read the book, finish reading the book, and then take the next step from reading the book to get to your next level. All right, another thing to consider here is ask for help from experts and rely on your team. So if you're working with a company like Big Idea to Bestseller or you're working with individual experts, ask them for help. You're unlikely to have a ton of knowledge around this area, okay? I know I sure didn't, and sometimes I'm still learning a lot more about this. And so I'm always looking, who's the best expert? Who's on our publishing team that I can talk to about this? Who are the people that I know format books that I can talk to about this? Because they're going to help you identify the gaps, which will also stop you from procrastinating a little bit more. And then the last thing I want to share real quick here with you is make sure to select a font and a style that represents you, your vision, and your brand. So some people like to have various different sections in their books with bold fonts. Some people like to have more italicized. Some people like to put outlines around particular sections. I've done it all. I've seen it all. It really is up to you. All right, let's keep going here. Now, there are formatting styles, okay? And here are just a few things to get your mind going is page numbers. Do you want them on the inside corners? Do you want them in the middle? Do you want them on the outside corners? Where do you want your page numbers? Your header. What do you want on your header? Do you want your name? Do you want your title? Do you want the chapter name? What's the header that you want for each page on the left side and the right side? Your ebook, make sure that's clickable. In the paperback, you obviously can't click a link on the paperback, But on your ebook, people can click directly from wherever they're reading that. So make sure that the style matches the proper format and matches your end game goal. You can't put here and hyperlink in a paperback version of your book. You need to draw out the link. In the ebook, in theory, you could put here, but personally, I like to include the links as well, because in case people are visual or in case they want to see what the link actually is, I like to have that as a clickable link. Again, what is your preference? Now, this is a very, very important piece of advice. Whenever you get your book back from your team, make sure to review it thoroughly, okay? Thoroughly review this, because sometimes things can get lost. Things can get changed from the time it goes from your Google Doc and your Microsoft Word doc to the official formatted versions of your book. So it's really, really important that when this happens, review it thoroughly. Make sure nothing gets really changed. Are your headers on a line? Are the words cut off? Make sure that you do a read through to just dial in the professionalism and to make sure that nothing got changed. Because sometimes things like this can happen with all the different formats of your book. And when it comes to the size, this is a question I get asked all the time. Consider your audience. Okay, oftentimes font sizes 10 to 12 are fairly typical. Okay, but if you're working with an older audience, maybe you're going to want to be on the bigger side. If you're working with an audience you know that is going to highlight your book, or that's what you want them to do, don't make it so small that one highlight smears everything. When I wrote my first book, Elevate Beyond, and this was before I knew a lot of the stuff, I ended up going with a bigger font because I wanted to make it feel like a little bit longer of a book, because it was on the shorter of the word count side. And what ended up happening was that people who read this book, the biggest feedback I got was, Jake, I love how big the font is. I love how big the font is. It makes it such an easy to read, and I feel like I'm accomplishing so much more quickly. And that was an unbelievable hidden benefit that I couldn't have predicted because I didn't have the right knowledge at the time. But now you can have this knowledge. So who's your audience? What makes the most sense for that audience to enhance the reading experience? Do you need to fill up more space because your word count's on the shorter side, but you want to hit a certain page quota? Do you want to have a certain audience read your book? Are there certain areas that you need people to be able to see, that you need people to be able to identify, that you want to pop or stand out? These are all things to consider. And ultimately, just ask for help. Look at other books that you could refer to. Now, the last piece of formatting is to make sure that you label everything. I've seen it time and time again where people get their formatted versions back. They don't label which one is the final version, and then they end up uploading the wrong version. Or they do something where they give out copies of their books because now they have the format, but they gave them the wrong version with edits. And it can just not be super professional. So make sure to label your book with final. That's what I like to use. You can use whatever works for you when you have the final versions that will be used for publication or sharing. So now you know what it takes to format a book. And I think these tips are really, really advantageous for you when you're on this. This is part 8 of our 10-part series. And the right formatted book is going to be so incredibly advantageous to you to create a great experience and ultimately to create an absolutely professional book. So if you want to dig deeper into this, you can go to bigideabestseller.com/free-book. I want to send you a copy of my book, Big Idea to Bestseller, that goes right into all of this stuff. It's a step-by-step roadmap on exactly what to do at each stage of the process in creating and launching your book. And if you know you want some help, maybe you're already started your book and you know you want help with the production, or maybe you're just beginning the book, but you don't want to do this alone, then go to bigideabestseller.com/call and you can speak with our team to build out your entire book roadmap, talk about your book idea, talk about the goals that you have, talk about the challenges or the things that you're unsure of, and we can show you what it takes to fill those gaps and how we can go from idea all the way to a best-selling book. So there you have it. That's part 8, how to format your book professionally and be seen as a legitimate author. I'll see you for part 9.